Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you're streaming the show live on either one of those two fine radio stations' apps, which I highly recommend you download. You can download them both because they're both free to use, they're both free to download. A whole lot of other goodies that come along with the two apps. And most importantly, you can listen to this or any of the fine radio shows, or I should say it this way, this or the fine radio shows that air on both of these stations in crystal clear streaming audio. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program. Love to get your thoughts, 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show, or you can reach out to me. I am at Gingerly Tweets on X and at Gingerwatch on Instagram. Couple of guests, very excited about both of them. Comedian Greg Warren will be my guest in less than 20 minutes. He'll be at Looney's Comedy Corner this Sunday for a couple of shows. You may have seen him on TV with Nate Bargatze, or I believe he opened up for Nate when Nate was here in Colorado Springs. So very funny. Comedian Greg Warren will be my guest. Has a sports background, so talk some sports with him as well as talking about his chosen profession. Then at 5:30, Laura Busby, the head coach of the Air Force women's soccer team, will join me. They are the preseason #1 team in the Mountain West, the favorite to win the conference as voted on by the coaches. See what Coach Busby thinks about that and her team's season, which begins with a doozy, Army visiting Colorado Springs on Thursday. But we will proceed with the show and a topic that I knew was going to jump the day. And I knew it was going to jump the day because yesterday was the day that Kay Adams was out at Broncos camp. And that's when Sean Payton gets very chatty and maybe gets a bit hyperbolic. But I will have to say, in regards to one player, Sean Payton's hyperbole was matched by everybody else's. The subject being Pat Bryant, who has now been officially proclaimed by me the training camp darling of the year 2026. Here was what Sean Payton said to Kay Adams yesterday.
I want whatever Pat Bryant's having to drink, whatever he's hydrating with. How the hell are you going to keep this kid off the field?
We're not.
What?
Yeah, we're going to play
the jump. Explain the jump.
Well, he's real confident. We saw it last year
Did
early
we?
on. Well,
I don't know that I did. I'll admit it. I don't know if I did.
It's hard when you're in LA to see it all. but we saw it like here day to day. He's got really strong hands in traffic. He's got that gift where, and anyone who runs well after the catch, their feet stay on the turf, and his feet stay on the ground. He's got really, really good hands. So you're seeing someone in year 2 with that confidence. He's extremely smart, so he knows all the positions.
But then Bo's throwing it where only he can get it. Like, what does that show?
There's a lot of confidence in his catch radius. He's big.
Yeah.
Illinois.
And look, it reminds me a little bit of Marvin Mims, what he said in there about, we're going to play him. Sean Payton, for the first couple of years of his tenure with the Denver Broncos, if you asked him, his biggest failure was not getting Russell Wilson to play a level of quarterback that could get the Broncos wins. It was that he couldn't get Marvin Mims on the field, and he kept lamenting week in and week out, we got to find him more touches, So what he says about Pat Bryant reminds me of that, because I said this on yesterday's show. You can only spread it around so much. Cortland Sutton was Bo's guy last year. You gave up a lot of draft capital to get Jalen Waddle. It's supposed to be much better in year 2 with Evan Ingram. Davis Webb says they're 5 deep at running back. And there's Marvin Mims. And there's Bo Nix running the football. Not everybody can have the type of season that people are profiling for them. Somebody is going to be left out. And I said this, it comes down to Pat Bryant or Troy Franklin. One of those guys is going to be like a student at the Milford Academy on Arrested Development, neither seen nor heard. You just can't get everyone involved. Even Sean Payton and Davis Webb can't get everyone involved. So the question is, how much can they get Pat Bryant on the field? How much can they get him involved? Or are we going to look back and go, yeah, that was training camp, but now that the games are going, it's for real, there are stakes. Don't see a lot of Pat Bryant. There was a question in there about how Bo Nix feels about him. This was Bo Nix on Pat Bryant.
He's been extremely consistent, but also, he's been available the whole training camp. He's gone. He's taken a lot of reps. He's just competed very well. He's just got a great edge to him, and I think when he gets out there against our DBs, he competes at a high level, and he makes great catches. And we see it all the time with him and other guys, and they're just continuing to improve. For him, it's only year 2, so he's got a lot, left in his tank that we're able to see at practice that I think he's going to be able to show this year during the season.
So I think Bo Nix hits on the entire phenomenon of training camp darlings. And when it comes to Pat Bryant specifically, he said it there. He's been out there. He's been working with the team. Cortland Sutton has had multiple rest days. Jalen Waddle had some muscle tightness. The numbers at the wide receiver position haven't been as plentiful as they were to begin camp. And the guy that's out there is Pat Bryant. And give him credit, he's made the most of it. But I feel like this is what this training camp, the idea of a training camp darling is kind of built out of. It's just the guy you see. People say you're not supposed to date your coworkers, but the reason there's an attraction there is because you see them every day. And the question is, are you really attracted to them, or do you just see them every day? It feels like Pat Bryant is the Broncos player that everybody is seeing every day. And because he's new, because he's off the beaten path, right? Everyone's talking about Jalen Waddle. Everyone's talking about Bo Nix, J.K. Dobbins, Nick Bonito, Pat Surtain. This is a chance to talk about somebody different. I think that's what goes into it. And Pat Bryant's not the first, nor will he be the last. But it got me thinking about how real is this stuff? And anecdotally, you can remember when Kyle Sloter was the training camp darling one year for the Denver Broncos, quarterback from Northern Colorado? Not much happened after that training camp for Kyle Sloter in Denver. So I kind of dug a little bit deeper on this. And there are a couple of guys like, look, Bo Nix, couple years ago was the training camp darling because he was first round pick, possible franchise quarterback. That's a natural thing, and that hype exists everywhere. Pat Surtain was another one. When he was a rookie, he was the big talk of training camp and what impact he could be as a rookie. But you look for some of these other guys that are maybe not as highly touted, not as naturally drawing the attention as a first round pick. Jaleel McLaughlin was one of these. Now, I would argue that Jaleel McLaughlin did have an impact his first year, but was it ever what was expected or what was thought of during training camp? I mean, there was talk that Jaleel McLaughlin was the best running back on the Broncos roster. I don't think that proved out to be the case. But there's no doubt that Jaleel McLaughlin was impactful, and then his star faded fast. Right? I mean, he was an afterthought last year. We were talking about Tyler Bidet more than we were talking about Jaleel McLaughlin. 2022, how about Greg Dulcich? Greg Dulcich, for as long as he was in Denver, was a training camp darling. And that's another thing that brings up. It's not just the seeing him every day. It's also what they can do when they don't have full pads on, or what they can do when they're not being hit, right? The athleticism of these players tends to stand out more in these early training camp practices than they do in the games. And that was the thing with Greg Dulcich. The guy on a practice field was an Adonis, but because of injuries and just lack of production, and never put it together on a football field. Here's maybe my favorite one, just because it's wide receiver to wide receiver. Devon Vele. Devon Vele last year was one of the training camp darlings, and then he was traded. So don't rule out the idea here, or the reality, going to my earlier point, that the Broncos may be a bit heavy in terms of numbers in the wide receiver room. Doesn't seem like they got rid of anybody when they brought in Jalen Waddle. It forced everyone one spot down the depth chart. Well, that's got to squeeze somebody out. So I'll just tell you the next thing that's going to come out of Broncos camp. One of the next things. Shortly after the preseason game, probably, there will be whispers that the Broncos are looking to move a wide receiver. Pat Bryant or Troy Franklin. That will start to come out, because they can't all be on the field. Right? Broncos don't operate that way, and they all can't be productive, and they are both, Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin, young enough that maybe there's some value out there. Now, when Devon Vele got traded to New Orleans, we kind of went, that's it? So that could be something too. Like, I don't want to completely dismiss what's going on with Pat Bryant, because, again, this list that I was able to pull up, like, some of these guys did contribute. But the problem with training camp hype is it gets out of control, because it just builds and builds and builds and builds over the course of a month. And then you have the preseason games where guys like Pat Bryant should showcase well, because they're going up against either non-NFL players or guys even younger than they are. They should be noticeable. They should be able to make plays. And then the hype just grows, and it grows and grows and grows. So right now, I think that there's some basis in reality about Pat Bryant, because some of the things I'm hearing about him were on the scouting report when they drafted him. Okay, so it's not like this guy's completely transformed who he is. He's showing more of what the Broncos thought he would be coming out of Illinois. But I think we have to separate fact from fiction and acknowledge the reality of the Denver Broncos. This is a veteran team that has a lot of mouths to feed, and they just brought in Jalen Waddle. So I'm not saying don't believe the hype. I'm not saying that all of this is just smoke and mirrors and trying to hype a guy up. I think there will be a little bit of that, but it's an interesting phenomenon, the training camp darling. And I would say more often than not, especially if it's somebody that was not drafted with a premium draft pick, they tend to, when the games start and when things start for real, start to fade in the background. 719-24/7. 1313 just getting going on this edition of Drive Time Sports. Coming up next, comedian Greg Warren will be my guest. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. My first guest today will be appearing at Looney's Comedy Corner for not one, but two shows on his Impulse Buy Tour this Sunday. You can get to know him in the meantime by checking out his most recent stand-up special, The Champ. It's free on YouTube and on The Greatest Average American, which is on ABC. Greg Warren is my guest. Greg, pleasure to have you. The Champ, the name of your stand-up special, is that a general descriptor for you, or is there something specific that you're referring to?
I was a wrestler in college, and I talk mostly about stories that are very unchamp-like. I took some beatings, so it's somewhat taking a shot at myself, I guess, Ryan.
Well, and that's great that you're being, self-deprecation and all. You were not too shabby as a wrestler, if I recall. You were an All-American at Missouri, yes?
Yeah, my senior year, I improved. I talk about some of the early years. Our first dual meet was against Northern Iowa, and I went up against this guy who he was what they called in college wrestling at the time better than me, and we started wrestling, and I got tired early. First period, I was like, I got so tired. I was just laying on the mat. I couldn't move, and they were all yelling at me. And I was like, guys, I agree, this is bad, but we're not going to fix it tonight. Like usually when I get this tired, I don't get untired for several hours. My coach was like, get up. I was like, I don't know if you saw, I tried to do that 7 seconds ago, and he didn't want me to. Like he threw me down, coach. That's why I'm still down here. And then it got even worse, Ryan. The referee, the one guy in the gymnasium charged with my safety, started making fun of me. The referee, he was like, are you okay down there, son? Ha 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 ha. Like, he didn't care if I was okay. He was trying to get laughs. And as a comedian, I can tell you, he was good. Like he knew what he was doing. He was very good. Yeah.
And fast forward, it was that referee that inspired Greg Warren to start a career in stand-up comedy.
I think maybe, yeah, he was the first comedian that I looked up to,
I don't know if your stand-up comedy career started earlier than Missouri, and we're happy to have you this weekend. But I don't know if we want you back the next time Army visits the Air Force Academy, because we don't need any more Black Knight fans in the stands. Were there a lot of open mic nights at West Point, Greg?
No, they frowned on that sort of thing. I want to be clear. I did go to West Point for all of the plebe year, our first year. And then I left. It's a 4-year program, like the United States Air Force Academy. I was what they call in the military a quitter. I didn't. I think our country is a much safer place, for me having left the military academy.
How did your parents take that you were leaving the academy? Or
my mother was thrilled. My dad wasn't as thrilled. Yeah, he thought I was turning my back on a huge opportunity. But it was supportive. My dad's a supportive guy. Yeah.
It worked out. I mean, very different line of work that you're
sure.
in, but it's working out for you, I would say, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's especially the last couple years. I didn't think that my best years in show business would be when I was 57 years old. So, but it's actually gone pretty good lately.
And to that point, Greg Warren, my guest, see him at Looney's Comedy Corner this Sunday. He's got 2 shows on his Impulse Buy Tour. I find the taste of, as I'm sure you do as well, how the taste of audiences that go to comedy shows, how it changes. Maybe it's cyclical. you talk about the last couple of years, and you and Nate Bargatze work closely together on a variety of different projects, and your comedy, although you are both distinct individuals, of course, your comedy is, I would say, under kind of the same umbrella. I mean, it really seems like there is a moment right now where audiences are like, the kind of comedy that Greg's given me, the kind of comedy that Nate's given me, and other comedians, that's what we want right now.
Yeah, thanks for knowing that. I mean, Nate's a very generous guy, and he's a very ambitious guy, and he's sort of would like his brand to be the biggest thing there is. And, he's the biggest comedian in the world. And luckily we have a similar style. We're both clean, and we have very, very different styles, but both of us, his kind of rule is, whatever you're doing, if there's a kid in the car listening, it's not going to be a problem. Maybe it's not meant for them, but it's not going to be a problem. And I actually been working like that probably for the last 10 years anyway. So it just sort of happened. But yeah, he's done an amazing amount of things for me. Most recently, the game show was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool on ABC. And then he's a very, very generous guy.
Well,
I have some generous friends too. I have some other generous friends in this business, but they have no ambition. They're deadbeats. If they were, these guys have accomplished nothing. I love them, but they would give me anything they could, but unfortunately they have nothing. Nate is a very successful and very ambitious, and
gotta have both, Greg.
Have
both in this life, right? To be as popular as Nate is. But Greg Warren, my guest, the show on ABC, you got to flex your. I'm sure they taught you up at Mizzou about that. You were a journalism major, yeah. So that announcing the game show, that had to be kind of in your wheelhouse from your earlier days.
I think so. I do think I learned some stuff at J School. I was more there for wrestling. If I'm being honest, I didn't attend every class, but I wound up. I knew how to take tests, and I knew how to cram. But yeah, I know I had some pretty cool professors there. The game show thing just sort of happened. Like Nate told me about 48 hours before we started filming that I was going to do it.
So you can't say no.
Well, no, I was of course going to say yes. It's a huge opportunity. But I didn't really know what we were doing. And the first there was rehearsals for like a day, and Julian McCullough, who's one of the co-hosts, and I were in there, and there was some sort of lower level ABC exec there, and he was at rehearsals, and they decided at one point we're going to have Julian and me take over, like kind of hosting the second block of the whole game show, which I didn't think was a great idea, but I was sure. I was like, hey, sure, we'll do it. And we're looking at each other like, are we going to like carry the network here for 10 minutes? And then that's how we shot it, the first episode. And after the episode, one of Nate's friends came over and was like, hey, the network, they're going to make some changes after this first episode. And we were like, it involves me and Julian, right? And we were like, right. Are we fired? He goes, no. Yeah. We were like, hey man, I got to tell you, if you're talking about firing Nate, I'm leaving too, But no, they kind of, had Nate take over that second block. But the whole time we were joking, we felt bad for that low level exec that was sort of in the background during rehearsals, because I'm sure he was sitting in the truck during the first rehearsal with all the ABC brass, and they were like, hey, Daryl, you want to come here for a second? I just have one question. I'm looking at my monitor and I'm wondering, who are these two morons not named Nate Bargatze? I seem to remember hiring the biggest comedian in the world. Now I'm looking at moron number 1 and moron number 2 with the combined Q score of -6,000. So yeah, no, but the whole thing was it was a lot of fun, man. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it just if that low-level executive just would have seen you wrestle at Missouri, then they would have known.
Maybe in the later years.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I'm hoping he wouldn't have been around there for the Northern Iowa match. And there were others.
Right.
Yeah.
So St. Louis guy, Cards, Blues, the whole gambit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Cards huge. I was at the
Mhm.
game last night. We
nice.
we tried to rally against the Phillies in the late innings and almost pulled it off. But Bryce Harper's, I'm saying Bryce Harper's great, but Schwarber is really, really good, man. Kyle Schwarber is insanely good. But yeah, and I like the Blues, but I'm not in it like I am the Cardinals,
Mm-mm.
And I'm a big college wrestling fan. I still follow a lot of college wrestling.
Mhm.
I know way more than I should about college wrestling.
I'm curious because still to this day, the Nolan Arenado trade haunts the Rockies fan base.
Yeah, man.
How was that on the Cards side of the equation? Getting
Oh,
him
it was
numbers
amazing
years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, I never had season tickets, but I win a lot when we were competitive. I haven't gone as much lately, and I would always sit right behind the visitors' dugout, right on the third base side. So I saw him do things that I'll never see another baseball player do. I mean, class act, acrobatic, and I guess I think having a pretty good year with the Diamondbacks this year. I think.
Yeah, that warm weather, Greg.
Yeah,
I mean, it does something for the joints or whatever. Like, there's a reason why we all go down there when we get older. But yeah, he's having some kind of. I mean, I'll stop short of saying a renaissance, but it's remarkable to see what he's doing down in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Bush is the opposite of Coors Field. Like you can't hit in it anymore, especially if you're a pull hitter, like going to that side. It's impossible to hit a home run there. But yeah, no, I love that guy. I hope he has a great couple of years. It was really fun to watch, man.
Yeah, and we can wish him all the best because it's not like he's really standing in the way of our baseball teams lately. Our teams, in a different stage of life right now.
Yeah, I mean I think we're still somewhat competitive for a wild card spot with Arizona. I think we're probably a couple games behind them right now, but we'll see.
Well, we'll see. And you can follow them while you're out here in Colorado Springs this Sunday. Yeah. 2 shows on the Impulse Buy Tour. GregWarrenComedy.com, probably the best place to go. You could get tickets for the show, but also for all things Greg Warren. And make sure you go out and see him for one or both shows at Looney's Comedy Corner. Greg, this was fun. Appreciate you stopping by, and travel safe out here to Colorado Springs.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Really good talking to you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Great talking to you as well. We'll see you on Sunday. That's Greg Warren, outstanding and very, very funny comedian. Very, very funny comedian. Coming out 2 shows because one is not enough. We got to get as many people into Looney's as possible to see him coming up on Sunday. Again, GregWarrenComedy.com, a good place to go for that. I believe he opened, I wasn't able to go, but I believe he opened for Nate when Nate was here at the World Arena. And I had some family go to the show, and they actually told me that their favorite part was Greg. I believe that was Greg opened. If you went to the Nate Bargatze shows at the World Arena, text me at 719-247-1313. I think Greg opened there, but he's open for Nate on a lot of different tour stops, and then they do the show together on ABC. Yeah, it's funny, Greg. One more thing, and then I'll take a break. Something that Nate Bargatze had said on the Dan Patrick show. I don't remember if it was when they were in Lake Tahoe, for the celebrity golf tournament, or it was the Super Bowl. But Nate said something, and when Greg mentioned his last couple of years in his career, Nate said, you're either discovered when you're 20 or when you're 40. Like, you're either this wonderkind, like they get you immediately when you're 20, or you like suffer through your 30s and then comes the 40s. And that's where Nate is. I think he might be a little bit older now. Greg's kind of saying the same thing, like coming out of, Missouri and doing stand-up comedy, thought he'd hit immediately and didn't. And now here he is. But great to have Greg on the show. Hopefully you can go see him on Sunday at Looney's, and maybe I'll see you there as well. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we haven't had many quarterback competitions in NFL training camp. There's like 2, and now there's 1. The Minnesota Vikings have made their decision. We'll talk about it next. As much as at the time, I truly hated the Broncos quarterback competitions and the main reason is because they're not real. Like, I just have to say this. The quarterback competitions are not real. Remember Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater? There was no way Vic Fangio was going to go with Drew Lock. There's no way with his career as a head coach on the line. He was never going to go with Drew Lock. But it's just this whole big production that you have to do. I mean, most of these are like fake. And yet, we talk about them because something is said about one quarterback. The next quarterback has a better day, and we go back and forth. And I hated those days with the Denver Broncos. We haven't had those in a while. We've moved on to Jared Stidham versus Sam Ehlinger for the backup quarterback. And I say we, not me. We're not talking about that because who cares? But other people are talking about it. And here's another example of this. Minnesota. Did anyone actually think that Kevin O'Connell was going to go with J.J. McCarthy? Did anybody? I'm not saying did anybody remark that J.J. McCarthy had a good day or maybe was out playing Kyler Murray. I'm just talking about the competition, quote unquote, itself. Did anyone truly believe that by the start of the season, Kevin O'Connell was really going to hitch his wagon to J.J. McCarthy? I didn't. And this is not to say that the Vikings are, going to have another season like they had with Sam Darnold a couple of years ago with Kyler Murray. I'm just saying if they want any chance of having that, it would have to be Kyler. And today, the Minnesota Vikings, they didn't take long. They weren't playing the game. Quarterback competitions are games, and play the games. We're a couple weeks in. Prior to the first preseason game, boom, Kyler Murray's the Viking starter. And I applaud Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings for not wasting people's time. So many teams that do these quarterback competitions, they're just wasting everyone's time because they know who's going to start. Kyler Murray was always going to be the starter in Minnesota. But the more interesting aspect of this is certainly the J.J. McCarthy side of it. That's a tough division that they're in, right? I think Detroit bounces back this year. I got them. I think they're winning that division. Bears, I think, are one of the prime regression candidates, but I think they'll still be tough. And then there's Green Bay. I don't know what Minnesota is going to be able to do with Kyler Murray, but I promise you it's more than they'd be able to do with J.J. McCarthy. So now what happens to J.J. McCarthy? Because here's the unfortunate thing for him. You're already in a quarterback rehab spot. Like, I think when a first-round pick, and Mac Jones is a great recent example of this, but obviously there are others, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, but Mac Jones, okay, he goes from a place that had a defensive coordinator as the offensive coordinator, and then he goes and plays for Shanahan, right? And then got people believing that Mac Jones is a starter. Sam Darnold was in San Francisco, but then went to Minnesota, and that's what sold Seattle on the idea of making Sam Darnold their quarterback. J.J. McCarthy's already in Minnesota. He's already got someone from the Shanahan coaching tree coaching him. So who's going to look at J.J. McCarthy and say, if Kevin O'Connell's bailing on this guy, what hope do we have to rehabilitate him? I mean, it's a little Trey Lance-like, right? Like Trey Lance was in San Francisco. He was in the perfect spot to be a quarterback. It didn't work. You think Dallas was going to be better? So I don't know what happens to J.J. McCarthy after this. I don't think he has any value around the league. I think the Vikings will try to create value out of nothing. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to play the vast majority of these preseason games. But I don't know if anybody's going to buy into it, because there are very few places outside of Minnesota that you look at and say, well, they can rehabilitate J.J. McCarthy. But wasn't the writing on the wall? I mean, weren't the signs there? Like, I didn't love Bo Nix as much as some people did, but I liked him more than I liked J.J. McCarthy. I mean, in a sport now, I mean, think about college football. Right now, college football is crawling with these prolific passing quarterbacks that are putting up ridiculous numbers and playing for like 8 years, right? Bo Nix played forever in college football and put up massive numbers by the end of his career. And that creates an opportunity for coaches to be able to evaluate better these quarterbacks. Now, I question the ceiling with the Bo Nix, right? Because I feel like he's as ready-made for the NFL. And I said this at the time. He was always going to start for the Denver Broncos, because what are you waiting for? Sean Payton brought in the offensive line. Like, he was going to get protection. He was going to get good coaching. I mean, how much more ready could he be to be a starter in the NFL given his career at Oregon and Auburn? So you have this ability, and the Raiders did this with Fernando Mendoza, right? You get this guy who played 1 million college football games, and there you can evaluate the talent better. And then there's J.J. McCarthy, who played 2 years in a run-heavy scheme. So he not as experienced as some of these other quarterbacks, his other classmates. And I would say Drake May didn't have a ton of starts under his belt, but Drake May did everything for North Carolina. J.J. McCarthy was asked to do almost nothing for Jim Harbaugh's team. What was the Big Ten championship? He didn't throw a pass in the second half. Like, the writing was on the wall that steer clear of this guy. And yet, he ends up going before Bo Nix, but you know who made that all happen. Oh, yes. I'm surprised I haven't seen that more on social media today, because it's been a thing for the last couple of years. Anytime J.J. McCarthy struggles, Broncos fans especially like to bring up the clip of Sean Payton claiming that he baited the Minnesota Vikings into trading up with the Jets, flip-flopping picks to take J.J. McCarthy when Sean Payton wanted Bo Nix all along. We may never know the truth, but the fact of the matter is, you know, Bo Nix is doing pretty well for the Denver Broncos. So it's not like you're looking at what the Broncos have for a quarterback and saying, you know, they're just in as bad of a place as the Minnesota Vikings are. And the Vikings did trade up. Kind of hard to prove Sean Payton to be a liar in this situation. But yeah, he claims to make all this happen. All of this is Sean Payton's doing. So Kyler Murray should reach out and thank him. I think that's the way it works here. But yeah, 2 years as a starter in the most run-happy offense this side of the service academies. And that's the guy that you're going to draft to be your franchise quarterback. I mean, that was the one guy in that 2024 class. Right? Huge believer in Caleb Williams. Bordering on outright love for Caleb Williams. Infatuation with Caleb Williams as a quarterback. Really like Jaden Daniels, really like Drake May, was lukewarm on Bo Nix. Kind of the same deal with Michael Penix. That's not going well. I guess that's another quarterback competition that we have, Atlanta, although I think it's Tua. It's going to be Tua. I think it's like Minnesota. I think, and then just to finish the thought, J.J. McCarthy was the one guy that I'm like, no, I don't see it. I don't see a path. And now Kevin O'Connell's like, nope. But I think Atlanta is the same. If any, I guess the Atlanta quarterback competition is coming down to who's going to be available week one. It's not who the better quarterback is or whether you want to try to win now if you're Kevin Stefanski or you want to try to, win long-term by developing Michael Penix. It's literally just who's available week one is going to be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons because both Penix and Tua are hurt. But both guys healthy, I don't think that's a competition. I think Tua's getting that job. Everything that Kevin Stefanski went through last year in Cleveland with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, and he has a veteran quarterback on his roster, and he's going to go with Michael Penix? No way. With the money they gave Bijan and Kyle Pitts, no way. If Tua's healthy, Tua's the starter. That leaves really Cleveland as the only open competition, and I don't think it is open because I don't think the money Deshaun Watson is making matters as much as people want to make it out to seem. You don't have a coach that's on the hot seat. Todd Monken just got there, so he's got time. And I think the Cleveland Browns would just as soon be able to, get rid of Deshaun Watson than to rehabilitate any of his value because he's still got a contract nobody's going to want. I think that's Shedeur's job in Cleveland. I'm not as, tied into it, but I think it is. Back after this. Welcome in. Thanks for stopping by. Whether you're listening to the show, Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVR might be a little hit and miss today. Our engineers are working on it, but that's why we have apps that you could stream the show, either the Extra Sports 1300 app or the KVOR app. It will accomplish the same goal without those pesky transmitter issues. Or you could watch the show, as more and more of you are every single day, on a variety of social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, and Twitch. We're in all of those places. And while you're there, if you're watching, like, subscribe, follow. I would greatly appreciate it. My kids would greatly appreciate it, because that's currency, social currency in their world. And they want to be able to talk about how many followers their father has on social media. I'm kidding. That's ridiculous. They don't care at all about anything that I do here on a daily basis. They don't. When's dinner going to be ready, Dad? That's what they want to know. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. Saw this from Chris Thomason of the Gazette. Bo Nix talking about Evan Ingram. And I heard Bo Nix talk. This must have been a side conversation. I didn't hear this when Bo spoke yesterday out at training camp. But, you know, kind of the theme recently of Broncos training camp, at least the way I see it, is you can't, not everybody is going to have the season that they're being expected to on the Denver Broncos. They're just, it's too much. We got to rein it in. We got to recalibrate. All of these guys aren't going to be able to have the seasons that people are projecting for them. There is only one football, and that football will be in the hands of a quarterback that also likes to run the football. So the idea is, who's going to be weeded out here? I think the early signs certainly point to Troy Franklin being on the outside looking in, with all the hyperbole that surrounds Pat Bryant at this moment in time. But there's another guy, another contender perhaps, because Bo Nix told Chris Thomason that last year the Broncos utilized Evan Ingram as a vertical pass threat, which I believe has been basically his role in every place he's been. Bo Nix threw out the idea of Evan Ingram blocking more, and thereby he would be on the field more. So Evan Ingram, who is being hailed upon his arrival by me included, as, this guy, dynamic tight end. Broncos don't have one of those. They got these short yarders blocking tight ends that Sean Payton loves so much. Evan Ingram maybe could stretch the field a little bit. I didn't have the loftiest expectations for him, but I thought, he brought an added dimension. And I thought, the one tight end that Sean Payton really utilized to his full ability, I think, was Jimmy Graham. And in no world is Evan Ingram Jimmy Graham, but like poor man's version of Jimmy Graham, something like that. I just thought in Sean Payton's infinite offensive wisdom that he would find something for Evan Ingram. And now what they're finding is him blocking like every other Broncos tight end. First of all, do we know he can do that? Second of all, if this is true, then go ahead and cross Evan Ingram breakout second season off your list, and maybe further bearing the idea of a joker in Denver. I don't think jokers are supposed to be blocking. I don't remember that being part of the job description when it comes to a joker. This says to me, this dude is not at all what we thought we were getting. And Sean Payton said it about a week or so ago. Like, he didn't just out and out take Evan Ingram to task, but he was talking about, catching the football and doing all of the things that are being asked of you. I don't think Evan Ingram took care of his body. I don't think that he did the things that he was supposed to do on the football field. And that's why I don't think it was that they couldn't find a role for him. I mean, he's far and away the most talented tight end that they have on the roster. I just don't think he was holding up his end of the bargain. And if you're trying to, they do this in corporate America a lot. We'll find something for you. You're not going to do this. Well, I thought that's what I was bringing Brian to do. Yeah, no. If you look at your contract, other duties as assigned, right? We're going to go ahead and you're going to do this. You're going to do some blocking, which is, I'm not saying it's not important, but in terms of the idea of Evan Ingram and what he could be in his second year, this is the death of it. So you could cross him off the list. So we're at 2 now. Troy Franklin and Evan Ingram. We could stop with the hyperbole. We could stop with the lofty expectations. The herd is thinning out as we move along in Broncos camp. So now, but don't worry, you still have Jalen Waddle, you still have Cortland Sutton. I'm not saying the hype around Pat Bryant is completely unfounded. Marvin Mims has established what he is, and it's in limited quantities, but it's pretty good in those limited quantities. J.K. Dobbins, guess what? Back out on the practice field today. No ill effects from his muscle tightness that he was diagnosed with yesterday as he left camp. He was back out there today. Then you have R.J. Harvey. And Jonah Coleman starting to get a little bit more mention. So we got to thin out the herd a little bit more till we get down to, okay, these are the skill players that the Denver Broncos are actually going to be relying on, that are actually going to make an impact on the Broncos' fortunes this season. Doesn't look like Troy Franklin's trending in that direction. And if what Bo Nix is saying is true about Evan Ingram, then we can take him off the list. So but it's good. Maybe we're a little bit early, but at some point we got to pivot to, all right, enough with all the training camp bluster and hyperbole and hype. Who's actually going to be impacting the Broncos on Sundays? In terms of catching the ball, running with the ball, scoring touchdowns. Very important things. Things that the Denver Broncos could not do seemingly through the first 3 quarters of any football game all season long, which is, and I'm being hyperbolic when I say that. It wasn't every game. It felt like every game. You got to get dudes to get some yards, put some points on the board. Doesn't seem like Troy Franklin and Evan Ingram are going to be a part of that. But maybe Pat Bryant will, as his hype continues to go through the roof. And here's another important point when it comes to training camp and the hype, and it plays into the news out of Minnesota that Kyler Murray is going to be the starter. Like this idea, this Fugazi quarterback competition that Minnesota said they gave up on that as soon as they possibly could. And they're like, yeah, Kyler Murray's going to be our starter. Here's the thing about training camp. You see what the coaches want you to see. It's heavily controlled when the media is allowed to film, when the media is allowed to observe practice. There's a very specific message that a seasoned head coach like Sean Payton delivers at the podium each and every day. It's very controlled. And that's why I wonder, like, maybe there's a path back for Troy Franklin, because part of me wonders if Pat Bryant is going to be, I know one of those two guys is going to be in trade rumors. It's going to happen at some point between now and the beginning of the season. Either Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant, or potentially both, you'll hear whispers that the Broncos are trying to move one of them. Devon Vele. Right? Think of Devon Vele. Okay, training camp darling. Everyone, oh, watch out for Devon Vele, and then he wasn't even on the team. They moved him. Very coordinated, very calculated. You see what they want you to see. Right? Veterans get days off. They're highlighting a specific player. This is all intentional. It's like a good magician or illusionist. You're seeing what they want you to see. Now, the problem is that's all we can go on. Like, I'm not trying to sit here and say that the media that's up at training camp needs to sneak their way in and watch the rest of practice, or like tear apart the Broncos organization looking for the truth here. Like, we all are biased against what our eyes see. So it's hard for us to talk about somebody we're not seeing out there. So everyone's just talking about what they're seeing, and what they're seeing is Pat Bryant doing a lot of things. Troy Franklin doesn't seem like we're hearing much about him. Not hearing much about Jahdae Barron. Hearing a lot about Riley Moss. A lot of Riley Moss propaganda to start training camp. Not a lot on Jahdae Barron. They're seeing what they want you to see. I think in some ways, like, I almost think the more significant thing are the guys that you're not hearing about. Right? I don't think it's good that you're not hearing a lot about Jahdae Barron. I really don't. And somebody's hypothesizing that the Broncos are playing him at safety. I don't think that's good. I put more stock into the guys we're not hearing about in terms of, well, maybe, they're not really worth showcasing at this point in training camp, versus the guys that they're putting front and center to go, oh, well, look at this guy about ready to have a huge season. But all we can go on is what we see. But these coaches, especially somebody like, I don't know if there are a lot of secrets going on, a lot of manipulation going on at Dolphins camp. Right? Like, Joe Hafley's just kind of he's got to put it all out there. Like, anybody that he can put out there that looks good, he's going to do it. I don't know that there's a lot of misdirection and propping up guys. I just think Miami's like, we just got to go out there and do our thing. We just got to get ready to not go 1-16, which the USA Today projects we're going to be. But when you're a better team like the Broncos, when you have a more well-traveled head coach, been around the block, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Sean Payton, these top coaches that have been around for a while, they know what the deal is. They know how to manipulate all of this. And so that's why I take some of the reports out of camp with a healthy dose of skepticism. Because I'm wondering if the players that we're hearing a lot about, Sean Payton wants you to hear about. 719-24-7. 13-13. Again, J.K. Dobbins back out on the practice field. Don't want that item to get buried. And Bo Nix telling Chris Thomason that maybe Evan Ingram's going to do a little bit more blocking this year. Plan your fantasy football draft board accordingly. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, as we get closer to the season, I'm starting to hone in on my predictions, as I'm sure you are as well. I don't know if you're with me on this. I feel like I'm pretty set on the division winners. Who finishes second and therefore has a shot at a wild card has been a little bit more difficult. I'll let you into my thought process, and I want to hear yours as well coming up next. Plenty of ways to get in touch with the program, including, but again, not limited to, commenting on our live stream. One of those places we are streaming live is on Facebook, which Robert, the veritable Robert Stanlick, hosts the show right before I come on 740 KVUR, says Cowherd has the Chargers winning the West and Kansas City getting the wild card. Now, that leads perfectly into what I want to discuss, and I want to take you inside as I am mulling over my predictions for the upcoming NFL season, and I don't proclaim to be special. You're doing the same thing, so we can help each other out here. Is it just me, or are the division winners seem obvious? Fairly obvious. I'm not saying that there isn't competition in these divisions. In fact, most divisions have at least two teams that you could see a world where they're winning the division. But when I start to kind of think about this stuff, I feel myself going through the division winners pretty fast. So let me walk you through my thought process, and feel free to reach out either on Facebook, or you could call or text in at 719-247-1313 if you disagree with me on these. So where I'm at today in the AFC, let's start with where Robert mentioned in the West. I agree with Colin Cowherd. I think that the Chargers win that division. And I see a team that won 11 games last year with no tackles, and now they have tackles, and their tackles are two of the best tackles of all the tackles, and they added Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator, awesome. Head coach, So I actually am pretty set on the Chargers winning the West. I think that the Broncos are one of those prime regression candidates, and I just can't see Kansas City completely flipping the script from a year ago. Right? They finished with 6 wins, and they're going to turn around and be on top of the AFC West again. That's not what I feel in my heart. So I'm like, yeah, Chargers. Ravens. I know there's a little bit of the unknown with Jesse Minter, but what Jesse Minter has going for him when it comes to the team's best player is he's not John Harbaugh. So it's like, even if Jesse Minter isn't as good of a head coach as I think he will be, just the fact that John Harbaugh is not the coach anymore, it's got to make Lamar Jackson play inspired football. They improved the defensive side. Jesse Minter certainly will help with the Ravens defense. As a head coach, as the CEO, we'll all find out together. But there's no way that the Ravens defense, with the personnel they've added and Jesse Minter there, are not going to be better. Like, nobody talks about the Charger defense as one of the best defenses in the league. So it's like, yeah, Ravens. I think the Bills will be back on top of the East. And the division in the AFC that I am a little bit more torn on is the South. I mean, I'm going with Houston. I think that's where I am. But I really like Jacksonville. I really do. They do get Travis Hunter back. Still got to figure out what he is. But in fairness, they didn't get a full season to kind of go through it. And it's funny, I've always been a proponent of Travis Hunter being a corner first and then just being kind of like a Marvin Mims for the Broncos on offense and just kind of being in there a few times and not really the full two-way thing, no. But I thought he'd be a corner, but then you watch the Jags season play out, and you're like, Trevor Lawrence needs guys who can catch the ball. Jacksonville led the league in drops last year. Like, if Travis Hunter can catch the football, Trevor Lawrence needs him. I still feel like corner is the best place for Travis Hunter, but a need has emerged with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I think it will be Houston, because the CJ Stroud stuff, I know he didn't light the world on fire during the regular season, but our real issue with CJ Stroud is how awful he's looked in the playoffs. They have the best defense in the NFL. Really like D'Amico Ryans as the head coach. I paused for a moment when I got to the South, but I'm like, yeah, I think Houston. And in the NFC, there's got to be a little bit of a hangover for Seattle. I mean, don't get me wrong. Seattle's still every bit a Super Bowl contender, but I've seen it before, right? As you have as well. There is a little bit of a hangover, just in terms of, are you going to have the regular season that you had a year ago? I think Seattle's going to take a step back in that regard, but do not sleep on Seattle at all when it comes to being a Super Bowl contender. They absolutely can be right back in that game this year. I'm still trying to poke holes in the Rams thing. I'm trying, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I feel like I arrived at these division winners so fast, I'm like, nah, this can't be right. And the Rams, I'm desperately looking, what is it? I mean, health, obviously. But, like, is there a football reason to not take the Rams? I haven't found it yet. Maybe it's this news that Puka might be disciplined by the league. You know what's funny? Like, we're waiting for Jonathan Cooper. Not the situation isn't funny, but I'm saying, like, we're expecting Jonathan Cooper and all of this to be wrapped up and figured out, and yet the NFL still hasn't done anything with Josh Jacobs and Puka Nacua yet. Like, if there's a queue, and I maybe you jump the queue when you're in Jonathan Cooper's situation and you're being charged with a felony, but like if it's in the order in which they cross Roger Goodell's desk, it's like Adam Schefter today was just theorizing that maybe Puka and Josh Jacobs would be disciplined by the league. And it's like their stuff happened way before Jonathan Cooper's did. But maybe that's what it is. And maybe that's what opens the door. And I don't expect Puka Nacua to be suspended for the season or anything. But maybe that's opens it. Maybe that evens it out. A little bit of a Super Bowl hangover for Seattle, coupled with an early suspension perhaps for Puka Nacua, maybe evens it out. But I'll stick with the Rams, absent of that information on Puka Nacua's status. Go the Rams. I know the Lions, they just lost their center. I know their secondary has been, talk about league discipline. Their secondary, you know, there aren't a lot of perfect teams around the league. Right? So we do have to acknowledge the faults in all of these teams. I really like Detroit to be back on top of that division. And they didn't lose out by much. But, like, I keep coming back to the North. Yeah, Detroit. The East, I still have Philly. I like the Cowboys, but not nearly to the degree that some people in the national media do. But it's the Cowboys. What do you expect? They're always going to get carried away. And I like the Giants. I actually think the Giants might be the team that improves the most their win total from one year to the next. I look at them a little bit like I looked at New England last year, and I know how New England's season ended. Right? They exceeded my expectation, but my thought about New England going into the year was I like this team to take a jump and compete for a playoff spot, maybe get in to a wild card spot. I think that the Giants have that potential, but I still think that division's Phillies. And I know people are focused on them losing AJ Brown. I'm not so sure that's not in some ways for the best, because the offense that Sean Mannion is bringing in is a lot of timing, a lot of short passing game with Jalen Hurts. That just sounds right. And look, if you have A.J. Brown, you don't do that. You heave bombs down the sideline and tell A.J. Brown to go get it. Or you don't do that and A.J. Brown gets upset and then you saw what happened. I don't think Philly's a better team without A.J. Brown. But I feel like what they're pivoting to after trading him, I feel like is the right move. And I think Philly, and they're still one of the most talented rosters in the National Football League. So I still think that division goes through Philly. And then in the South, I guess I lied a little bit because the South is, I've already started to back off of my backing of the Buccaneers. Like, I think Baker's going to be on a mission, and I really like that. I don't know if I like anything else about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That division is tough. That's the one I'm like, I can't love the Saints. I can't. I'm trying, and I get it. I see what people are saying. I just can't get there. So I think if I were to look ahead and fast forward, I think I might have Carolina back on top of that division. That's the one that I really stop and think about. But all the other divisions, as far as the division winners, I mean, this feels pretty straightforward, at least in my mind. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. The next team up in that division and the wild cards by extension, that's what I'm tossing and turning at night trying to figure out. And the AFC West is one of those divisions. Talk a little bit about that next. Tomorrow night, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC takes on Spokane Velocity in the quarterfinals of the USL Cup. You can hear the match 7 o'clock, Extra Sports 1300 and the Extra Sports 1300 app. So I feel like I got a pretty good idea when it comes to the division winners, save for, it's funny, DJ Michaels texted me and said he's having trouble with the two Souths. And I would say those are the two divisions that are giving me pause. And I should amend what I say. Every division I feel pretty solid about except the NFC South. That one's going to come down to the wire. And I feel like I've been telling myself not to lose too much sleep over it because it's probably not going to matter after the first day of playoff games, if you catch my drift here. I don't think any of the NFC South teams are long for a postseason run. So I feel like I shouldn't be spending as much time worrying about the NFC South as I am. But because I care, that's really what it is. I care about my job and I care about delivering to you what I believe to be the truth on a daily basis. So I'm going to decide who's going to win the NFC South, but it's going to take me a while. You're going to have to be patient. But every other division I feel like I'm good on. And the AFC South, I pause for a moment. And then I go, yeah, it's Houston. But Jacksonville, I think, is not too far behind. All the other divisions, I feel pretty confident in. You go one step down because we're going to get 3 wild cards, right? In each conference. 6 total teams that finish second or worse in their division are going to make the playoff, which is an abomination. But I've fought that fight and now I'm just tired. And I don't like 7 playoff teams in each conference. I don't think the NFL should have expanded. I don't think we should get a 17th game. I don't want it. But again, it's I'm on the wrong side of history there. So 6 teams that finish second or worse in their division are going to make the playoffs. So like these are significant. And that's where I am having the issue. And I'll start with the AFC West. On paper, it should be the Denver Broncos. Right? It should be. Kansas City has gaping holes on various points of their roster. The Broncos don't. And we were talking about this at the end of yesterday's show when Bleacher Report came out with the most stacked rosters. And the Broncos were on that list. And I think they lack star power that some of these other teams may have. But they're like solid everywhere. Like, I don't love Riley Moss. And I don't love the inside linebackers that the Broncos have. But but they account for it, right? It's very intentional the way that Sean and George Payton have built this roster, right? It's a salary cap league. You can't spend like drunken sailors everywhere. But they're like solid everywhere. So they have no huge holes on their roster like Kansas City does. But they still have the best quarterback in the division. They did add the Super Bowl MVP. I like the rookies that the Kansas City Chiefs have. It's just you got to make a little bit of a bet with them to produce in year one. They have the best coach in the division. It's tough. A flawed, I mean, it's a flawed Chiefs team or a very buttoned up, well-rounded, well-built Denver Broncos team that maybe you don't love a lot of what they have. Right? Surtain, certainly. I love the addition of Waddle. But like not like, Mahomes. Right? And Kenneth Walker as a Super Bowl MVP and a dynamic to the Chiefs offense they've so desperately needed for years now. So I think I'm still Broncos 2, Chiefs 3, but like that's why I'm doing this now, because by the start of the season, I think I may well have talked myself out of the Broncos being second in the division. Now, they could still make the postseason. And then you go to the north. Do I ride with Cincinnati? They are healthy right now. They did invest in their defense, to be fair. But do I buy into them one more time? Or do I take Pittsburgh? So I think that's a little bit tougher. I think I'm leaning Cincinnati just because they're healthy, with the acknowledgement that probably by week 5 they're not going to be. But I don't want to project that. I don't want to project people getting hurt. It's not fun. I want to turn injuries off. And if that's the case, then I'm taking Cincinnati. Really, the only thing that's keeping me from taking Cincinnati is I'm just so sure that somebody's going to get hurt. That's going to profoundly affect the Cincinnati Bengals season, which would open the door for Pittsburgh. The East, that's not a problem. I'm set on Buffalo as the division winner, but I am set on New England being the second team in that division. No Miami, no Jets, don't even bother. So that one's easy. The South, I actually think, is easy. I'm selling the Colts. I think they had their moment last year, and I'm not buying into it. I feel like that was a 1-year thing, and now I like Jonathan Taylor, but that defense is not good at all. And I just think you bet on Daniel Jones at your own peril. I'm pretty solidly Jacksonville there. And then in the NFC, the North, like I know since Chicago, is a prime regression candidate. They have all the underlying symptoms of a team that's going to take a step back this year. But Caleb and that offense. And I'm souring on Green Bay by the day. That's another one where I'm like, one team's got an upward trajectory in my mind because I kind of went low on Chicago. Right? I said they're going to be a regret. They're going to regress. And now I'm starting to build them back up, whereas Green Bay would have solidly been the team, a few months ago that I would take. And I'm like, kind of talking myself out of Green Bay. The South is a mess. I can't even figure out the division winner, let alone who finishes second. Could be Atlanta. Why not? So I don't know. The East, I'm going Dallas, because I think the Giants can make a jump, but look at where they were last year. Like, they could double their win total and not really be in the playoff conversation seriously. So I think there's a world where two things can be true, that the Giants can be one of the teams adding the most wins from one year to the next to their win total and still not be a playoff team. And I think it's, unless you really love 3 teams in the division, I'll get AFC West, you get to the NFC West shortly. I think you got to cut it off somewhere and say, well, this is probably going to be just 2 teams, if not just one. And I think Dallas's defense will be good enough to be the second best team in that division. Laramie Tunsil getting hurt for Washington. I was already teetering on Washington, and then Tunsil getting hurt. It's like, oh, it's brutal for him. Absolutely brutal to lose Tunsil. And in the West, I actually am pretty set on Seattle. I actually don't give San Francisco much of a chance to be the second team in that division. But it could be a division where there's 3 playoff teams in it, like last year. I think the Seahawks, little bit of a Super Bowl hangover, but not enough of one. And it doesn't counteract the electrical substation. Now McCaffrey is of all the people, we thought that all of his teammates were being sacrificed so he could stay healthy, and now he's hurt. I believe in Kyle Shanahan, and they have talent on that team. Like, I'm not predicting the San Francisco 49ers fall off a cliff at all. They're going to be right in the thick of things in the playoff race, even with an incredibly banged up roster, because they just did that last year. But I think I'm pretty solidly in the camp of San Francisco's the 3rd best team in that division. From the 719, Chiefs, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Indy as division winners, I'm guessing. And then LA being the Rams, Detroit, Philly, Tampa. So you and I see more eye to eye in the NFC than the AFC. And then the wild card in the AFC as the Chargers, Ravens, Houston, NFC, Seattle, San Francisco, Dallas. Yeah, I think you and I are, as my earbuds fall out of my ear. It happens a lot. You ever notice that? See, earbuds are too big for my small ear canals. I get that. That's why I don't hear anybody. People think I don't listen. It's not like the earbuds are falling out of my ears. Anyway, I think the NFC, you and I think we're simpatico. I mean, maybe we'll flip a couple of them, but like I said, Tampa, their hold in my mind on the NFC South, tenuous, very tenuous. AFC, I think we have the same group of teams. I don't like the Colts nearly as much as you do. I will say that. But the rest of the teams, I feel like I just have kind of some of those divisions flip-flop. But I think I like a lot of what you got. Take your thoughts. Never too early. I mean, and we all change our minds. And the way it's going, unfortunately, the Lions lost their starting center. Laramie Tunsil got hurt. Broncos have a soft tissue injury seeming every day now. 49ers and their rash of injuries. Like, I hate to be this guy, and I feel like I've been fixated on injuries the last few days, but we're probably going to have another one. We're probably going to have another one somewhere in the NFL that we go, yeah, I don't like that team nearly as much without that guy. 719-247-1313. Again, mine, I feel like the division winners outside of the Souths, I feel pretty good about. Buffalo, Baltimore, the Chargers, and that's it. And then I pause for a moment, but then I go Houston in the South. The NFC, Rams, Lions, Eagles, and Tampa, question mark, in the South. And then I think you're going to have, again, Dallas, Chicago, Green Bay, San Francisco, Seattle, all vying for a wild card spot. In the AFC, I feel like by the time I get to the start of the season, I'm going to take Kansas City to finish ahead of the Broncos. I can feel it in my bones that's what's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen. I just know myself well enough. And then Cincinnati, if healthy, but I feel like somebody's going to get hurt, and that's going to open the door for Pittsburgh. New England, no question. And Jacksonville, very little question as far as the wild card contenders. Subject to change. Of course. Always subject to change. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show. The latest from Broncos camp, the latest in the Peyton Watson saga. And for all you sickos out there, the NBA big time nights schedules are out. Tell you where the Nuggets are on Christmas and opening night and all that good stuff. Plus, Laura Busby, the head coach of the Air Force women's soccer team, will join me at 5:30. Stay tuned. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVUR and Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you. However you may be consuming today's show, I know one way you can't, and we apologize. It's not our fault. Blame the power company, but KVOR right now, not up and running, but that's why we put this show on so many other platforms, primarily on Extra Sports 1300 or the Extra Sports 1300 app, KVOR app. That's good. That's fine. And then the live stream of the show anywhere you scroll. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and X at Extra Sports 1300 and at 740 KVOR. Coming up this hour, a couple of things Air Force related. Laura Busby, the head coach of the women's soccer team, will join me. They have been picked to finish first in the Mountain West, and their season starts with the biggie. Army is coming in on Thursday night. And also this hour, your chance to get qualified to win 4 season tickets to the Air Force football season. In the meantime, 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to give your thoughts on the day's topics like these, the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with day 2 of the hype, or I guess it was all confined to yesterday, but late yesterday, Sean Payton driving the hype train even more. For one, Pat Bryant, here he was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams.
I want whatever Pat Bryant's having to drink, whatever he's hydrating. Like, how the hell are you going to keep this kid off the field?
We're not.
What?
Yeah, we're going to play
the jump. Explain the jump.
Well, he's real confident. We saw it last year early on. Well,
I don't know that I did. I'll admit it. I don't know if I did.
It's hard when you're in LA to see it all.
So Sean Payton being his gregarious self when on with national media types, but yesterday really was Pat Bryant Day. Everyone was loving what Pat Bryant is doing. And that has made him the darling of training camp. But I think you have to be a little careful in getting too carried away because the batting average on training camp darlings is not great. Especially when you get guys who are, lower picks. Right? Once you start trying to unearth it, it's easy to go the first round pick, right? Bo Nix was the training camp darling a couple years ago. Pat Surtain was. Those were the guys that everyone was loving on and everything like that. And you see why. But it's when you're trying to get like what Kay Adams said. Like, did we see Pat Bryant? Did we see how special this guy could be last year? If anything, he was a training camp darling last year too. But when it got to the season, I don't think we saw a ton of Pat Bryant. It's those guys that you have to wonder about their staying power once the season begins and longer term. Right? Devon Vele, does that name ring a bell to you? Devon Vele was a training camp darling last year. And he was eventually forced out. He was the odd man out in that wide receiver room that Pat Bryant currently inhabits. And some of the Devon Vele hype, I feel like, was an orchestrated attempt to up his trade value. And what I see from the Denver Broncos some point in the very near future is we're going to hear whispers that they're carrying one too many wide receivers. And either Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant, there will not be a spot for them. And ideally, you trade somebody, right? Early on, unless you're San Francisco, we don't have a ton of training camp injuries, and especially at the wide receiver position. So I think we're too early on this, but I think you're going to hear whispers because I really feel like Franklin or Bryant One of them's going to be left standing. But could all the Pat Bryant hype potentially lead the Denver Broncos to maybe dangling him as a trade candidate? NFL coaches, especially the experienced ones, are very good about making you see what they want you to see. Right? And Bo Nix even kind of talked about this yesterday. Not the coaches make you see what you want to see, but part of the reason why Pat Bryant's getting a lot of hype is because he's one of the few wide receivers that's been consistently on the field. He's had more of an opportunity to catch the eyes of the public. Cortland Sutton's had veteran rest days. Jalen Waddle pulled up with muscle tightness. Pat Bryant's been out there, and to his credit, he's seizing the opportunity, but I feel like that's where a lot of this is coming from. This is who we're seeing. But coaches are very good about knowing what they're going to allow everyone to see at the beginning of camp, what you're going to see if you're watching camp the whole way through a practice. It's very intentional, especially with somebody like Sean Payton. So it makes me a little bit more hesitant to fully buy in to a Pat Bryant or to a Jaleel McLaughlin or a Caden Stearns or a Devon Vele, because I feel like maybe there's an agenda here. It's not like there's no talent. They're not making it out of thin air, but are they making more of an effort to showcase it? And for what purpose? That's what I wonder about when it comes to the training camp darlings. But there's no doubt about it. Pat Bryant's that dude. And going into the first preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons, he immediately becomes one of the guys to watch in that one with what everybody is saying about him at Broncos camp right now. Speaking of NFL training camp and coaches, kind of manipulating us a little bit, we go to Minnesota, where they have come to a decision already on who their quarterback will be. And that will be Kyler Murray. They have made the decision to go with Kyler Murray, a decision that Kevin O'Connell was always going to make. I just appreciate that he didn't waste all of our time longer than he already had. It was always going to be Kyler Murray. Reportedly, J.J. McCarthy wasn't even O'Connell's guy. The guy that drafted J.J. McCarthy is gone. Like, the writing was in red paint all over the wall. And a lot of these quarterback competitions are not really competitions. The coach knows. Very few are truly, I'm going in with an open mind, and whoever's the best in camp is going to win the job. Right? You factor in, draft status. You factor in money. You factor in veteran versus a young player. You factor in your own mortality when it comes to being, are you a head coach on the hot seat? Like, you go in with a preconceived notion, and it would take a lot from the other guy in the reported quarterback competition to move you off of your position. And I think that was the case in Minnesota. It was always going to be Kyler Murray, and now they can move forward and try to showcase J.J. McCarthy in all these preseason games to get someone to bite. It brings into question why the Vikings even went with him in the first place. All we're getting now, coming out of college, are all of these prolific passing quarterbacks who have played more college football than anybody in the history of humankind. Right? With COVID turnbacks and, fifth year, sixth year transfer, all this kind of stuff. Like, these guys are playing a ton of football in terms of the number of games they're playing, because if they're not playing one place, they jump ship and go to another place, but they also get the extra eligibility. These guys are coming out more ready-made for the NFL than they ever have before. And then there's J.J. McCarthy, who played 2 seasons, that was it, and was on a Michigan team that ran the ball as much as anybody not named Air Force. Like how Sean Payton reportedly, allegedly duped Minnesota into trading up to draft J.J. McCarthy. Like, I'll never know. I don't know why he was worthy of being a first-round pick, let alone trading up to get the guy. I mean, at that point in that draft, it's like, if let the Broncos trade up and go get a guy. Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy. Let the board fall where it may. But Sean Payton allegedly duped him. So another notch on the belt of the Broncos head coach. But I don't know where J.J. McCarthy goes from here. Because you're already in one of the quarterback rehab clinics. There are a few different places. There's Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. There's San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. There's L.A. with Sean McVay. And maybe some people might want to say Indianapolis because of what Shane Steichen did with Daniel Jones. But I will remind you that Daniel Jones is the starter because Shane Steichen couldn't do anything with Anthony Richardson. Another one of those didn't play a lot of football, but seemed to have a lot of talent and was drafted way too high and ended up fizzling out. But it's really O'Connell, Shanahan, and McVay. Well, McCarthy was being coached the last couple of years by Kevin O'Connell. And he's like, yeah, nope, I can't do it. So where's he going to go? I don't think a lot of teams are going to be in the J.J. McCarthy business. He might sit on the Vikings roster for a little while. But Kyler Murray, onward and upward as the starter in Minnesota this year. And I like it, and I think Kyler's going to remind you of when he was good in Arizona. I just think that's an incredibly difficult division for the Vikings to, rule this upcoming season with Kyler Murray as their quarterback. A different division, if they're in the NFC South, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, Minnesota all day. The North, it's tough. But I think it will look better with Kyler Murray as the quarterback. Story number 3 is the NBA's primetime schedule has come out, or at least a good portion of it. The Denver Nuggets, couple of notes. One, will open their season October 22nd in Oklahoma City. So a natural fit for their opener. And then they will be playing on Christmas as per usual. They'll be in Golden State or at Golden State taking on Steph Curry and the Warriors. Some people showed their surprise that the Nuggets were a Christmas game. Like Jokic, one, there's a small group of teams that you can put in that window, right? Like Nikola Jokic is one of the best Christmas Day performers in the history of basketball. Like he puts up monster numbers on Christmas. And he's the best player in the world. Like that's what Christmas is. It's your showcase games. Are you going to put Phoenix in that game? You're going to put, I guess some people are saying the Lakers, but I think it's the Lakers are playing earlier in the day because they're playing LeBron. I'm not surprised that the Nuggets are playing, and I'm not surprised that they're playing the Warriors because Steph. But the national news when it comes to the schedule, arguably the biggest Christmas matchup based on where they put them in the pecking order, in the time slot, LeBron against Bronny, or LeBron facing his former team, and the Knicks are opening up with the Sixers, which was, by the way, always going to be the case. Before LeBron got there, it was going to be Sixers-Knicks. Let's not fool ourselves. And therein lies the genius of LeBron James. Because, yes, the league is still very dependent on him. He is still the face of the league. There's no doubt about that. And you can argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the facts. But he also knows what he can do, what moves he can make to make sure that he's in prime time as much as possible. And his name is still, he does his part to remain the face of the NBA, right? You join up with Philly, and that just further fortifies that the Knicks got to open with Philly, and Philly's got to be all over primetime, which I would argue Philly was going to be all over primetime, but now it's Philly with LeBron. So, not surprised. Not surprised about who the Nuggets are starting with, the fact that they're not on opening night. Oklahoma City, San Antonio, like, it's pretty obvious. No real surprises for me with the early NBA schedule release. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Air Force women's soccer coach Laura Busby joining me here in just a few minutes. In the meantime, latest with the Peyton Watson saga, because it has turned a little bit nasty. And that's what moves the needle, right? When things get contentious. So Rich Paul and company put out the word that they felt Peyton Watson was being disrespected by the Denver Nuggets because the Nuggets weren't willing to offer as much or more than Christian Brown got. And the reported offer from the Denver Nuggets was south of $20 million, which I view, again, as a fair valuation of Peyton Watson. Just because they overpaid Christian Brown doesn't mean they should also overpay Peyton Watson. So order is being restored a little bit with the Denver Nuggets, at least in that small part of what they do. So the Nuggets perhaps said, oh, you want to say that we're disrespecting you, which is a big claim to throw around, right? That you're disrespecting a member of your own team. So now this report coming out today that the Nuggets kept kind of waiting for Peyton Watson to show back up and to play in that playoff series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he didn't. And the thought within the Nuggets organization was he didn't push himself to come back because of this very thing that is happening right now, that he was going to be in a contract negotiation. So, counterpunch by the Denver Nuggets, letting it get out there that they thought that Peyton Watson was maybe thinking about a little bit more about himself and his future earning potential than the fate of the Denver Nuggets in that series against Minnesota. And it kind of hits a little bit harder as a criticism or as a thought or report, whatever it is, from the Denver Nuggets when you remember that Aaron Gordon risked his long-term NBA future to be out there for that Game 7 against the Thunder a couple years ago. Right? So there is someone on the team in recent history that has said, I don't care about my future. I want to try and help my team win. And it just further fortified how beloved Aaron Gordon is. Now, here's the one part. I don't think it's a good look from Peyton Watson. I will say that. But here's where I will defend Peyton Watson to some degree. Aaron Gordon's on a long-term deal. Okay? He's going to get a lot more paychecks from the Denver Nuggets regardless of what happened to him in Game 7. I don't want to diminish what he did. It was selfless. It was him putting the team before himself, absolutely. But he did have the financial safety net that Peyton Watson doesn't. And there are business decisions that are made in every league. Okay? I'm not saying it's something we're celebrating or praising or even complimenting. But if you put yourself into Peyton Watson's shoes, you're hurt, right? You're hurt. Nobody's saying he's faking the injury. And there's always that point where you're like, do I push it? I feel I'm right on the edge of whether I feel good enough to play or not. What side of the fence am I going to land on, though? When I'm facing a 1-year qualifying offer and maybe no long-term deal on the horizon? Do I put myself in that position? Do I fall on that side of the fence? Or do I err on the side of caution? I can kind of see Peyton Watson on his side of the thinking. Again, it's not a great look. and it's a little bit of a shot back after the disrespect stuff. So it's getting a little contentious here. With still probably over a month to go before any pens need to put to any paper. Coming up next, Laura Busby. What does she think about the preseason expectations being heaped on her Falcons? Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. The Air Force women's soccer team begins their season as the favorite to win the Mount West, as voted on by the coaches. 2 chances this week to see the team in action at the academy, starting with Army. Ever heard of them? Thursday night at 6. The head coach of the Falcons, Laura Busby, is my guest. Coach, you got one more practice until the start of the season. Is your team ready for it?
Yeah, of course. We're always ready for Army.
Yeah. So season 5 for you. These are all of your players that you picked to be here at the Air Force Academy, and you're voted on by your peers as the team to beat. That doesn't seem like a coincidence to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of changes in the Mountain West this year, obviously, and we are the highest remaining team from last season. So I think it makes sense, but the preseason poll doesn't mean a whole lot. It's where you finish rather than where you start.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just taking one day at a time.
So I would guess that the preseason poll does not get brought up a lot in team meetings, but I'm curious, does the way last season ended get brought up a lot, building up to, to motivate or to, be a building block to what you guys want to accomplish this year?
Yeah, certainly. I think when I think about last season, that was the first time during my tenure that we have qualified even for the Mountain West tournament. So I think it was a step in the right direction. And obviously we wanted to go all the way. But I think for our group, that was like they had their sights set on that goal of making it to the tournament. And so it felt like there was a bit of an exhale once we achieved that goal last year. And that's hard to quantify as a coach. Of course, you're always like, keep going, let's go. But it felt like there was a bit of an exhale. I think it was San Jose State on the road where we qualified. And that was the peak of our season last year. And so we've talked a lot as a staff and with, strength and conditioning, the entire team of people that we work with, of just, the peak has to be the Mountain West final this year. And so just approaching this year differently with that goal in mind.
And with winning not being novel, right? Like you mentioned how big of a sigh of relief that was and how big of a goal is, but now this group knows they can win. The demonstrated ability is there. And I got to imagine that's something that you guys hang your hat on going into the year, is that this team is not at all surprised when they have success.
Yeah, I've said that since the beginning here. It's hard to manufacture confidence or belief. And sometimes you have to get the results in order to build the belief. And I felt like last season, that was probably the biggest difference between, the previous seasons. We were talented the years prior, but we didn't quite have that belief. And so, it's kind of like it takes those wins in order to build that. And so I think last season, they kind of proved to themselves that they belong in that conversation. And obviously starting out as the favorites this year. I think I said this earlier to someone, but it's, a little bit of swagger and a little bit of confidence is actually good for our group. Some people might worry with having that target on your back or just the expectations that come along with it. But these are going to be Air Force officers someday that deal with a lot worse pressure. So I think just knowing the makeup of our group, having a little bit of confidence going into the season, I think will only help us.
Air Force women's soccer coach Laura Busby, my guest. They open with Army on Thursday, then Creighton on Sunday to get the season underway. The accolades or the preseason love, if you will, for your team as a whole was abundant, but also on an individual level. One player in particular, Jordan Dillingham, received a national look for her exploits. Having her on that back line, what does that allow your team to do off of her?
Yeah, I think last season, Jordan and Ani both were sophomores. And so, two of the biggest names in terms of individual recognition were only sophomores for us. And this year, they're juniors, they're upperclassmen. And it's funny at the academy, you just see them turn a corner when they're an upperclassman or, a junior or senior. So to think that we have 2 more seasons left with those players who are phenomenal leaders already, I think is really exciting. But, I've just seen them grow, both of them, in terms of their leadership and their voice, finding their voice within our group, leading by example, but also leading off the field in different ways. And I think that's been probably the greatest growth that I've seen with the 2 of them. And I think it's not just about their individual performance because it's a team sport. We need all 30 on our roster to be pulling in the same direction in order for us to win a championship this year. So for me, obviously I have high expectations for them on the field and they know that, but it's the expectation that we all have for them off the field in a leadership capacity that I think is going to prove to help our team be successful this season.
I saw on social media that your team has been very busy leading up to the season with cooking competitions and hiking and all of this preseason trip that you guys took. I wonder if the leadership of Ani and Jordan and some of your other players, is that where you start to kind of see it, is when you put them in these kind of team situations off the field and where you see kind of your leaders emerge?
Yeah, one of the things we worked on in the off season was just leading in the moment. So, whatever the moment requires, whether we're at a team meal out, at a restaurant and, one of our players collected everybody's cell phones. I didn't ask her to, but she was like, nope. All right, let me just everybody turn over your cell phones. We're going to and so for us, we're leveraging the fact that at a service academy, everyone who comes here has some leadership qualities. That's why they're attracted to this place. And so we feel fortunate to have, 30 players on our roster, but 30 leaders. And so we're just trying to leverage that where, leadership is accessible to anyone in any moment doing the right thing. So rather than this, concept or idea of just, one captain or a leadership council, this season they're embracing this idea that it's accessible to everyone and anyone can do the right thing in any given moment. But the quality time that we spent in Utah was certainly valuable for us to come together, at a service academy. We didn't have our freshmen. Everybody started July 15th this year. And so our freshmen are still in basic training, the same as Army, I'm sure. So, they're in the same boat as us. But this year with preseason starting July 15th, that was just our upperclassmen for about 2 whole weeks. So I feel like we're at a better starting place coming out of that preseason trip than we have been in previous years due to, starting with our upperclassmen. But the trip was important just to bring our freshmen into the fold and, get on the same page in terms of standards and goals that we have for the season.
And being a freshman at the Air Force Academy is unlike being a freshman almost anywhere else. I know the team you play on Thursday, as you mentioned, is kind of in the same boat as you guys are. But do you place an expectation, maybe on individual freshmen, but just the class as a whole? Like, do you kind of have a standard or do you kind of let it just flow because they're dealing with so much else? I'm curious as a coach how you handle a freshman class coming in and a freshman class coming in where there aren't a ton of spots, because we've been talking about the continuity that your team has. What do you think about your freshman class?
Yeah, it's funny. This is my 5th season, so I feel a little bit differently this year, maybe than I have in years past, just based on the depth that we have on our roster. I think when you're building a program towards something and growing, you obviously are recruiting to out-recruit the players that you have currently to continuously get better the next year. And so we've been doing that for 5 years now. And as you mentioned earlier, these are our players. And so we're at a place now where we have incredible depth on our roster. And the landscape has changed quite a bit with NIL and transfer portal and all of that. We don't operate in that world, but we do have unlimited full rides at service academies because everyone, comes here on a full ride. So we treat it that way in terms of recruiting, and we try to recruit the absolute best players that we can. But the standard, that our team holds has increased over the years. And it's become increasingly more challenging for freshmen to impact year after year. Now, we had 3 freshmen named to the all newcomer team last year, so we still had freshmen that were impacting in a big way. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some freshmen in the mix this year that will ultimately impact for us. But it gets harder and harder each year that the team gets better and better. And we see that even in the recruiting process to find players that are better than what we have. It's just a greater challenge now because the team has gotten better over the past several years. So in terms of expectations on them, we don't necessarily treat them differently, but we understand the demands of coming to a service academy, coming out of 6 weeks of basic training and straight into preseason. They're fatigued. There's no doubt about it. Their nervous system was kind of under distress for 6 weeks. So I think I've always told them, each individual comes out of basic training differently. And we've had players in the past, freshmen, who have impacted straight away for us in our first game. But I would say the majority of them don't feel back to normal until about a month out from basic training. Mm-hmm. So we just understand that, and we try to tell them to give themselves grace and be patient in the process. But they all have high expectations, for their freshman year. So sometimes it's hard when your mind wants to do something that your body is not necessarily following. I experienced that later on in life trying to play soccer, but for them, it's short-lived. They'll eventually come out of that and kind of recover. They just have to sleep as much as possible.
And be better for it in the end. And I look at the moment right now at the academy, what your team accomplished last year, what people think your team can accomplish this year. I spent all season with Stacey McIntyre's women's basketball team. That was 1 win away from playing in the NCAA tournament. The gymnastics team achieved heights that they hadn't, I think, like ever. And I get asked this question all the time, in the world of NIL, in the transfer portal. I mean, it's got to leave Air Force further and further behind. And I'm like, no, it's not, because there are multiple programs any given year that are doing incredible things. I mean, I know that it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I know you're up for, or else you wouldn't have taken this job. But you can win. Your team is proof, and there are other teams. You can win at a high level at the United States Air Force Academy, yeah?
Yeah, I think you could look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as a handicap and, a challenge. But I think the majority of the coaches that are here at the academy look at it as our superpower. We've got incredibly hardworking, coachable athletes. And not just a few of them, but an entire team of them. So I feel like as a coach, I've been able to have the greatest impact that I've been able to have in my career here at Air Force, simply because of the individuals that are attracted to this place. So if you know what you're doing as a coach, and you have people that are coachable, that take on feedback, that show up every single day and work hard without you asking them, that's like a dream come true for any coach. And I have an entire team of them right now. So it's on me to just, guide them and help them from a tactical standpoint and put the pieces in place. But I think a lot of the intangibles that every coach looks for, we have, and it's easy to attract them at the Air Force Academy, because they come here on a visit. They realize that this isn't just one program that has that culture on our team. It's an entire school of people that are cut that way in terms of, their work ethic, and they lean into challenges and are willing to compete on a daily basis. So I think it is our greatest superpower. There's certainly challenges here that I didn't experience at other places, but I really think in terms of recruiting, we are recruiting some really elite individuals to this place. So there really is no reason why you can't be successful here. And like you said, in the world of NIL and transfer portal, if someone doesn't get what they think they deserve at any given location, they just go in the transfer portal and they find somebody else that's going to give them what they're looking for. And we have a very low attrition rate of players that we have recruited to here. And so we're quite proud of that, of the fact that we do develop players across their 4 years. We obviously want to bring in people that are going to elevate our program from a soccer standpoint, but who are also right for the academy and are going to go on to be incredible officers in the Air Force and Space Force. So I think for us, it is a unique opportunity to truly develop players across their 4 years, whereas, a lot of other programs have players coming in and out, every year. And I actually have a funny story for you. We have a player who walked onto our program this spring. She was recruited to the Air Force Academy to play basketball. She then played basketball her freshman year and then was recruited by the track team and to do both. And so she did track her sophomore and junior years. And then she reached out to me at the end of last season and was like, "Hey, coach, will you let me try out? I want to try and walk on." And ultimately we picked her up for the soccer team. So she's going to be on our roster this season, and just an incredible story. But when that happened, for our team, it was so odd to have a player that, wasn't in the program for 3 years that comes in just for her senior year. And, I kind of said to our seniors, like, look, if she's the right fit for our program, which she is, and she can help us soccer wise, it's a no-brainer. And this happens at every other Division I institution across the country every single season with the transfer portal. But it was so, unfamiliar to our players of like, whoa, this is, and so it's just funny because that's like normal anyplace else. But for us, it's really odd to add, a senior who's only been with the program for 1 year, but she's phenomenal. So we're happy to have her.
So you got a little taste of the transfer portal. Would I be right in assuming that one, maybe a couple more would be okay, but like the full blown turning over your roster year to year is not something that you're lamenting on a daily basis that you don't get to do?
No, I mean, the challenges are, if the goalkeeper position is a very specialized position. And so if you lose a goalkeeper to the transfer portal or for whatever reason it doesn't work out, you can't replace them. So that's been one of our, challenges over the first several years is trying to get caught up. And you can't slow down graduation at the academy either. So we had 2 goalkeepers, 2 freshmen who played for us last year in goal. They're both phenomenal goalkeepers and we can't redshirt one, although I guess red shirts are now obsolete, but you can't slow down their graduation ultimately at the academy. So they'll, compete for one position for all 4 years. So that's a challenge. We do have 4 goalkeepers on our roster this year, 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores. So it feels like we're finally at full strength, but it took us some time to get there because most programs would just go in the transfer portal and bring in a junior, senior, or 5th year transfer. And we don't have that ability.
Oh, but yet here we are with the Air Force Falcons voted on number 1 by the coaches in the preseason coaches poll. It all begins Thursday night, Thursday night at 6, the Falcons will host Army, pack the house, flyovers, falconry, and of course, football, as we call it. Laura Busby, thanks for joining me, and I'm excited for this season. We'll see you out there on Thursday.
All right. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, my pleasure. That is the head coach of the Air Force women's soccer team, Laura Busby. Her team, again, 2 matches. Be there for the first one, definitely, right? Because it's Army and they're doing a lot of fun stuff, activities and everything around. And then Creighton coming in on Sunday. That is, I got a little bit longer left in the show here. My thanks to Laura Busby and Abby for lining that up. Coach came straight from practice to talk to me, so I certainly do appreciate that as they make their final preparations for the upcoming season. I do want to leave, the optimism surrounding the Air Force women's soccer team would be enough, but I'll just add this in at the end of the show here. Some great uniform news. So the Denver Broncos play the Seattle Seahawks. As you are aware, the Broncos will play every team in the NFC West, part of why their schedule is so difficult. In that game, being that it is an old AFC West rivalry, throwbacks across the board. Broncos with the D on the side of their helmet, that beautiful orange and blue, and Seattle's going to go with their like Rick Myrer, Dave Krieg. Probably Seattle fans would want me to say Steve Largent. That's more emblematic of that era. Those are the uniforms that the Seahawks are going to be wearing. So I will already call it now the best uniform matchup of the entire NFL season. And I haven't even I think Tampa's bringing out their creamsicles, and they might be playing another team that has some pretty dope throwbacks, but nobody's being that. The nostalgia, those old AFC West rivalry between Seattle and Denver, and two teams that I know what the conversation is going to be leading up to that match, that game. Sorry, soccer speak coming out of me. This should have been the Super Bowl matchup last year, but wanted to bring you that. Broncos announced it today, so that is great news. I think that was all I wanted to get to today. I want to thank comedian Greg Warren for joining me. You could see Greg at Looney's Comedy Corner this Sunday. He's got 2 shows, so pick the one that fits best with your Sunday plans. Very funny comedian. Has opened for Nate Bargatze at a lot of different venues. He was great. And then, of course, Laura Busby, great insight into her Falcons, which opened the season Thursday night at the Academy against Army. My thanks to you for your patronage and your interaction. Enjoy your evening, and let's do it all over again tomorrow at 3 on KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.